I know that you were asking, like what I would be thought of, if I was standing into this work. And believe it or not, like it took the birth of my child at home for me to be like, you know what, all those little voices in my head telling me I'm not good enough, I'm too white to serve medicine. Like that's a big one that comes up for me a lot. Because like my partner Chasky, he's Peruvian. He's very much indigenous looking. So he looks the part. Whereas me, I'm like this white woman, standing here in, like my Peruvian textiles, like deeply in love with the earth, like serving medicine. And for me, it's like, oh, am I a medicine woman? And like after having Sage, I was like, oh my gosh, if I can give birth, I can do anything and I'm going to do everything. So that's what like really got me out of my own way, was realizing like that being that portal for birth literally is the portal for everything in this life. Yeah, and that's how like Chasky and I are doing more sound healings now. Like I've been standing in my medicine woman more. Like I got to hold a few ceremonies at the women's retreat I was at last weekend. Just a few people coming in and they're like, "Hey, I'm really interested." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, let's create this space for you." And like such profound transformations and insights. And it's like, oh, I am a medicine woman.
I'm Krystal Arthur, and I'm your host for the Divine Desire podcast. This podcast is to gift you the sexy, spiritual, sovereign, and specific wisdom to help you find and follow your desire into the magical relationships, business, and life that serves the world and excites your soul. I have been studying and coaching in spirituality, wellness, business, and desire professionally for nearly 15 years. I've been on a journey from being a pastor's wife, mother, and seminary student riddled with depression and anxiety with a toxic marriage, to training in holistic health, hypnotherapy, practicing a tantric approach to sex, love, and relationships, having 5 kids, and a sexy, sovereign, and sacred union of 11 years. I've searched heaven and hell to discover the wellness, woo, and taboo paths and practitioners to help us remember the wholeness and truth, goodness, and beauty within. And I can't wait to share them with you. Do you have a divine desire to heal and reclaim your relationship with yourself, your power, purpose, pleasure, prosperity, and your partner? Do you have an inner knowing of a calling, but fear holding you back from honoring the truest part of yourself? What lights you up? You're in the right place. Some guests may stretch or challenge you. Some guests will help unlock your next level of evolution. My intention is that every conversation is a catalyst to you owning yourself and manifesting your truest desires. This is the space to remind us we are infinite and our desires are the roadmap to our dreams. Here you'll find the inspiration and implementation to go from doing your inner work to being and sharing the work of art that you are. Hello. I am here with Courtney Elizabeth Valencia, and I'm really excited to share her with you guys. So I think the first time that we actually met in person was the spring retreat, right? Actually, a spring retreat?
Yeah, because I think you had come like a day after it started and stayed for the whole day.
Yeah. And I think immediately we dropped into talking about womb wisdom.
Yeah.
We just went in and it's like, oh, I like you.
It's when you see people,
Yes. So Courtney is a medicine woman. She is a kitchen alchemist. She is so many different things. She's a mama. And I just am really excited to share her wisdom with you. She has a lot of ancient wisdom, and I'm honestly, I'm mostly excited for myself right now because we keep crossing paths and I keep getting taste of your medicine, but I haven't really gotten to have a full-blown conversation with you and hear about your journey and your story. So let's just go right in.
Okay.
So take me to the beginning. How did you begin walking the path of the medicine woman?
Oh, so great question. I am actually a nurse. I don't know if you knew that piece of me too. So I actually was in nursing school and had my great awakening moment and was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing to people?
I did not know that you were a nurse too.
Yeah, so the awakening moment, we started cleaning up our diet. We went plant-based and like everything flowed in, like meditation, movement of the body, more yoga practice, higher vibrational, high quality food. Like you really, when you start that path of like noticing things, you can't unnotice it and you just keep going further. So like, I remember one day my partner Chasky came home and was like, where's my shaving cream? I'm like, oh man, it's got chemicals in it. And literally like I cleared the whole bathroom out in one day and then like cleared the kitchen and like did the things to, you know, raise the vibration of our family. And so when I got done with nursing school, I was in question with so much of my life and so much of the world's truths and all the things. I was like, you know what? Let's just sell everything and move to Peru. So that's what we did. We sold our house, we sold most of our furniture, we sold a car, and we moved to Peru with our 2 older daughters for 6 months.
Oh, wow. So you lived in Peru for 6 months.
We lived in Peru at that time for 6 months.
Now Chasky has family in Peru? Like she's from Peru,
so
right?
my partner Chasky is from Peru. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like going home, but another home. Yeah, so we spent 6 months in Cusco and around the Sacred Valley in the mountains of Peru. And we were there. A ceremony popped up on our Facebook feed. Thank you, Facebook, for hearing what we need. Yeah, and we showed up and we sat in this 11:11 portal opening ceremony, and then it just like opened our paths to medicine. We were working with non-hallucinogenics, and then with the same shaman we had sat in that ceremony with, we started working with San Pedro or Wachuma, which is a mescaline-based cactus, and you drink it and you have like a really potent journey, and it actually like healed our marriage.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I was going to go a completely different direction until you said that. So now I need to know, tell me more about, because I do relationship coaching specifically for people who are in distressing marriages. I am so curious right now. And psychedelic plant medicine has been a part of our journey and has been a significant part of the healing of our marriage. So tell me more.
So it was actually funny because the morning of the journey, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go. I'm not sure. I like tripped up the stairs and like was gushing blood from my shin. I was like, I can't go. I can't go. And then my inside was like, my intuition's like, oh no, you're going. Wrap that up and let's get going. And so we went and it was like the most beautiful day. And like, I literally became Mother Earth, which is so much of what I embody anyways, being a mom, having had 4 children, birthed one completely natural at home, which is an experience. Like I was Mother Earth in that ceremony. And it, for my partner Chasky, what dropped in was, how can I speak about Pachamama in such a beautiful way with deep reverence to the mother when I don't treat my wife that way? What? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in that moment, he saw me as Pachamama because that's who I am. That's what we are as the creators, as the feminine. Like that's who we are. We are the creators of life. And in that moment, it was like, oh my gosh, I have to work on my relationship and my view of my wife because who she is today is not who she was. We have walked so many paths together and changed our entire lives together that it's like, oh my gosh, how can I treat somebody who's carried my children, who is Mother Earth, like this? And then it was like, so much greatness.
You ain't getting that in marital counseling. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like that's, I mean, if you are, let us know. Let us but I've never heard of anyone getting that kind of experience from sitting down with a marital counselor. Like that's powerful. That's the power of these beautiful medicines that Mother Earth has in place for our deep healing as humanity. Like San Pedro specifically, Wachuma, he's such a grandfather medicine and he opens your heart space so much. And so you have deep relations with the earth and you can have such profound experiences with your heart so wide open. I've heard you talk about grandfather Pedro and then grandmother Cacao and how take me more into like your relationship with the plants. What is that? How do you develop a relationship with plants?
So the biggest thing is like holding ceremony and having such deep reverence for each medicine, because even the herbs you cook with, that's medicine from the earth, right? Like, yeah, it makes the food taste good, but they're medicine. They hold such great purpose. So for me, like, for example, with San Pedro, when you cut the San Pedro, it's ceremony, deep reverence for the plant. Thank you so much for the gift that you bring to our lives. Thank you so much for the journey that you are going to help me take. Mm-hmm. And, the whole time you're preparing it, you're singing to it, you're playing music to it, you're praying, because these sacraments are so sacred.
Wow.
Right? And then, so not only are you programming the medicine with your love and your intentions while you're creating it, now you're sitting with it and you're setting deep intentions. Right? And then you drink. And so it's like from start to finish, it's such a ceremony. And I believe that that's why these spirits help us see so much of what we might not be able to see every day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So did you always feel a connection with Mother Earth, or is it something that, where did that begin? Did you always feel that connection?
No.
Okay.
It's a connection that I've cultivated, and I'm grateful because through having a partner that is from the Andes, where they're very much still culturally intact with some of their, they pay to the earth after they harvest, or they pay to the earth before they plant seeds. Like, there's such deep connection with Mother Earth herself. And so through being in this space in Peru and seeing such a different perspective of life, I've really been able to cultivate that relationship with Mother Earth within myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, you told me this before. Remind me, you and Chasky were together from young.
Yeah. So I was 19.
Yeah.
So
not that young, but still, yeah.
15 years, married for 14 and have 4 children in that time. Like, we've been many versions of ourselves together. Mm-hmm. And like, I'm grateful because especially during our awakening process, so many people I talked to, they thought they were crazy. They thought like that their world was literally crashing down because their perspectives didn't match a single person around them. And they were full of so much light and didn't know what to do with it. Right. So like, Chasky and I have had each other through this entire experience, which has been so incredibly beautiful.
That could be the whole rest of the podcast.
So like, I have a lot to talk about, sister.
So 2020, I might have mentioned this on another podcast, but I watched like so many of like the women that I followed online, they were going through divorces.
Uh-huh.
And I think there is like a lot of that happening in general as people are awakening, as people are deconstructing, as people are reinventing themselves, evolving.
Yes.
And when there's a misalignment with your life partner, that can be so challenging and cause like a rupture. Mm-hmm. It can cause a rupture. And I've been so thankful, like you just said, that Kingston and I have been together through so many different versions of ourselves. And somehow, not even super intentionally, but somehow it stayed aligned. Like, one might be like a little bit here, but then it's like, but we're there together. Mm-hmm. And that's fascinating. So being that he has that heritage, was he already coming into the relationship with some of his own connection, or was it like the same as what you experienced? You guys went to Peru and it began opening up there together.
He's always had the cultural part of it. So right. Like, I remember during, like the New Year, we would have lentils and grapes because that's what they do in Peru. And like, we would put them in all corners of the house. And, like, there were certain practices that we would do every year, even as like completely unconscious beings. Right. But it's so ingrained in his culture to pay to the earth, like, we don't drink anymore, but there's a big drinking culture where he's from. And I swear, like, they before they drink, they pay to the earth first, and then they drink their beer, right? Or their soda or whatever. So it's like, it's a practice you see even little children doing. Now, they might not fully consciously connect what that is, but they know like, oh, I have to give some to Pachita first before I can have mine. Right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting what you were talking about 2020, because I was making these connections myself of a lot of the women specifically have woken up so much more and are raising their vibrations, and their partners aren't doing the same work and raising their vibrations to match them. So I feel that there comes this point where someone in the relationship, if the other person is completely refusing to raise their vibration up and their frequency, that you have to take the backpack off and let it go. And I feel that that's still happening because our collective is raising their frequency. So people are waking up and matching it, and other people aren't, and they're being left behind. And that sometimes is your partner.
I'm starting to see it kind of like women are the containers for that awakening. Like when we go through it, then we hold that space, and men can choose to penetrate that space, you know, with love and consciousness, or they can pull out, you know, like they
100% that.
And so like, but if they choose to go in, with us, then it births something beautiful for themselves, for us, for the world.
Yeah.
And so and is that the only, I think some men do it in a different way. Like, but it's always, but when I see women going through this change, going through this evolution, I am seeing a lot of us holding that space.
Absolutely.
Holding that space and going a little bit more. Men can rise to the occasion.
They can.
But a lot of men don't know their own potency.
Absolutely. And
they
that's
don't know
why
their own potency.
These, women are gathering so frequently right now because we know the power of a circle of women. We are unbreakable in a circle, right? And in coming together like this, we can change the frequency of the planet because we're all coming together with so much light and love. That's the biggest part, right? Having these circles of safety for men to be able to do this work also is so pivotal. It's so pivotal. And it's something that Chastity and I talk about frequently, is that men need this space and they need to feel safe to come into it. Because I think a lot of these circles that have been created, maybe men aren't feeling the call because maybe they're intimidated. They're not sure. It's like such a logical unknowing, which is uncomfortable, right? Because people know that when they sign up for these weekends of, complete transformation and liberation, they're not the same person they walked in the door as.
Yeah. It seems like men are more comfortable with the mission and women are more comfortable with mystery.
Absolutely.
Like, give me marching orders. Say, we're going to go here, we're going to conquer that, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And then women are. That's interesting. That's a whole nother, I wasn't prepared to go that direction. And my mind is going, okay, so we're going to.
So let's bring it.
Right. Oh, yeah. Man, that's interesting. That's another podcast. So did you have, so me personally, I have had, a journey. I have not with San Pedro or ayahuasca, but I've done it with psilocybin. And, but I'd say the dose was, I have not experienced like an ego death. I have not. So for me, that brings up some fear. Was there any fear for you as you began journeying with medicine or just embracing this new identity? Like even one, the unknown of the concept of an ego death or, just meeting these plant spirits and all these different things, but also what other people would think of you.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So being that I'm a nurse and also work with hallucinogenics has brought up a lot for me personally, because when you are tied to the system, if something was to happen during a journey, they're going to come after me because I'm tied to the system with a license. So, so it took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree between having kids, right? Finally get it. I worked for a year and 4 months and COVID hits and I'm like, I'm really good. This is so much of what I don't believe in. Like, I did not get a bachelor's degree to be a drug dealer because that's what I felt like. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And I actually let my license go also. So that way I can serve hallucinogenics because they deeply heal people and they're so incredibly beautiful. Being able to see people walk out of these journeys so much freer and so much lighter is like the most rewarding thing. And these people that show up to these spaces, they're doing their work. they want the next level because maybe they're stuck and they don't know where to go or what to do, and they need a little bit of insight. Like, that's why we sit with these medicines sometimes too, is like, I'm stuck. What am I doing? I'm doing the work. Like, I keep meditating every day. I'm eating really well. Like, why is this not working for me? And it's like, oh, this is when I can consult with a plant medicine and do some deep in internal work and see why I'm standing in my own way. Because most of the time, sister, it's us. We're standing in our own way. Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely, that's my experience for sure. Now, when it comes to like the legalities and stuff, do you guys still have the church that you formed, like the legal entity?
So we have a 501c3 called the Church of Gaia Consciousness. It's a beautiful opportunity for us to be able to serve medicine without necessarily, like being super illegal. Like, we use these sacraments, these sacred medicines, in a way that's deep reverence for the planet, deep reverence for the earth, deep reverence for, Father Sky. Like, we really believe in the potency of these medicines, and to be able to serve them with like such gratitude for the medicine. Like, that's another reason why we got our 501c3, so that way we could do that and have more freedom.
I love how you talk of them as sacraments. Have you read the book, The Immortality Key?
I haven't.
Have you heard of it?
No.
So, have I talked about this in the podcast yet? I don't know. It's very fascinating. It's kind of dense to read, honestly.
Okay.
But it's very, so I went to Bible college and seminary. Have we talked about that?
I knew that you were in the church.
Yes. And then we were in ministry. And so I was able to keep my attention for those reasons, because I'm used to that kind of study. But there's the argument that it presents. It's just not even an argument. It's not even arguing anything. It's just presenting evidence that there, in the Vatican, there's evidence that the sacrament that Jesus served, the blood and the wine, the blood being the wine and the bread being his flesh, but that the wine had like psilocybin, was psychedelic wine. I was like, nah. But it makes so much sense. And there's significant evidence pointing towards that as fact. I can't prove it, but it was enough for me. I was like, yep. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, would I argue with somebody about that? No, it wouldn't be worth it. That's not my MO anymore. But it was like, that makes sense to me. And also just like, why not? So like, I'm very fascinated by the concept. Also, we were planting a church for a number of years while we were still like conservative, traditional church. So I'm very fascinated by the idea of this because it's been so impactful in our life. And I think I want more people to know about the Church of Gaia Consciousness. We have been interested in starting, I don't even know what it would look like.
Yeah.
But I think that there's been more, as I've kind of had like my finger a little bit on the pulse of this, like in our nation. And I think that being kind of the framework would be so beneficial, so beneficial to our world and to our nation. Like, oh my gosh. And to the planet herself. Like, so what does that do? Is it like a framework for you guys that you function underneath with your different offerings? Or do you guys meet as a church? Or is it like just how you're able to offer your different services and ceremonies?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we opened our 501c3 2 years ago, and we've been in so much transition between living in Peru some months and then being here. We actually used to live on a school bus for the last 4 years, right? 6 people, school bus. It's a lot of energy in one space. So we've been kind of like in transition since 2020, to be completely honest. And so we haven't had a chance to like set roots down and get like a physical church. So right now, like, we're meeting as community, sometimes for donation sound healings or cacao ceremonies or potlucks, when we can have a space available to us. So if we have not if, when we have a Say Sister, we'll have a lot more community offerings. And then, yes, this 501c3 was also intended to help with serving medicine here as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And it's so cool, actually, just a little side note. Like, every time we've come home from Peru, we come back to St. Louis, and I'm like, what is this? Like, why are we back in St. Louis, right? Like, come right back to the energy that I left in, right? Like, straight back to the frequency that is here, right? Because it's a little dense here.
If you know, you know.
It is. It is.
You know, you know.
And so, like, we're filling out our paperwork, and there's a state religious freedom act of protection here, and as well as a federal, and there's like maybe 10 states in the nation that have a state governed religious freedom act. So I was like, oh, okay, universe, I see you. And I feel that this is such a potent place to start this work or continue this work. Because, I mean, plant medicine's being used on the coasts, like in, medical facilities, like psilocybin's more acceptable out there. Ketamine trials are happening, like there's a big explosion of hallucinogenics on the coasts because that's where most of like the, new up and coming things start, right? And it takes 5 to 10 years to trickle into the Midwest, right? So to be this beacon of light and to be this beacon of love here in the middle is part of why I know we're here. We are the heart of the country here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So have you gotten any backlash? Have you gotten any people judging or showing you hate?
No, not thus far. Like, I know that you were asking, like what I would be thought of, if I was standing into this work. And believe it or not, like it took the birth of my child at home for me to be like, you know what? All those little voices in my head telling me I'm not good enough. I'm too white to serve medicine. Like that's a big one that comes up for me a lot because like my partner Chasky, he's Peruvian. He's very much indigenous looking. So he looks the part. Whereas me, I'm like this white woman, standing here in, like my Peruvian textiles, like deeply in love with the earth, like serving medicine. And for me, it's like, oh, am I a medicine woman? And like after having Sage, I was like, oh my gosh, if I can give birth, I can do anything and I'm going to do everything. So that's what like really got me out of my own way was realizing like that being that portal for birth literally is the portal for everything in this life. Yeah. And that's how like Chasky and I are doing more sound healings now. Like I've been standing in my medicine woman more. Like I got to hold a few ceremonies at the women's retreat I was at last weekend. Just a few people coming in and they're like, "Hey, I'm really interested." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, let's create this space for you." And like such profound transformations and insights. And it's like, oh, I am a medicine woman, right? And the imposter syndrome, like so real. Like you sent me the questionnaire, right? So there's so many questions that she sends and she's like, what is your business offerings and all this stuff? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm in the budding stages of all the seeds that I've been planting for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's like, oh, well, I actually don't have professional photos yet. Oh my gosh, I don't have a website yet. Oh my God, am I actually doing this? Is this who I am? And it's like, yes, I am. And I'm just going to show up. I'm not going to answer those questions because I didn't. Show up and have a conversation. And it feels good.
Yeah.
And it's a reminder like that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing because it's also lighting me on fire.
Yes. If you're ready to heal your relationship with yourself and your partner, deepen your impact in the wellness for spiritual space, and reclaim your power and pleasure, you'll want to join our online community and newsletter. Newsletter sounds boring, but it's totally free and will ensure you don't miss a single transmission. Likewise, the community is an additional free space to remind us our desires are the roadmap to our dreams. Our community and newsletter dive deep into the challenges of balancing intimacy, personal growth, and building a purpose-driven business. You'll get exclusive insights from our podcast, along with tools and resources for things like embodying the power couple dynamic, where your business and relationship fuel each other, integrating fear and imposter syndrome in launching and growing a spiritual or taboo business, reclaiming power and pleasure, yet alchemizing shame and criticism. It's in community that you'll find the initiations and inspirations that will pave your path towards embodying your full potential. Joining the community will automatically add you to the email list. Again, it's totally free, and it's the #1 way to support the podcast. Simply go to KrystalArthur.com or click the link in the show notes. That's my name, KrystalArthur.com, or find the link in the show notes. Join us today and step into the true power of who you are, both in your relationship and in your business.
I for real have these moments sometimes where I have to check myself because I'm like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. Oh, I don't know, whatever. And like I was in the kitchen not that long ago thinking about how I missed the music from the Huni Quinn tribe that we've sat with in Peru. They're from Brazil, okay? And they come to Peru and they work traditionally with ayahuasca and hape, which is like a tobacco-based, non-hallucinogenic. But anyhow, I was like, man, I miss sitting in their music. And in that same moment, I was like, most people have never had that experience. Oh my gosh, I have so much to share.
Yeah, you do. You really do. I mean, every time I'm in a space where you're giving an offering, I'm like, what's she doing? Okay, tell me more. Every time. So tell me more about your relationship with food. And then we touched on it some already, but I know you do some Ayurvedic cooking. I think if there's a space that I'm the witchiest, it's in the kitchen. I bring it up because I saw like on your Facebook, somebody was like, kitchen witchin, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. And I've had some food, it's delicious, but it's also nutritious on more than one level. So tell me more about that. And then I want to go into womb wisdom.
Ooh, okay. I love talking about all the things.
Yeah.
Okay, so for food, when I had my awakening, I started to really, really become conscious of the food, reading all the labels, doing the things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing to people in America, right? Like the ingredients just blow me away. So then, we went plant-based and started cooking that way. And then I started studying Ayurveda a little bit. I got into one semester, really soaked up some knowledge, and then was like, oh, my child's too young for me to fully immerse in this. I'm like, okay, thank you for the wisdom I've received. And I'm going to have to step out and check in with this at a later date when I have more time, right? Mom life. It is a thing. So in doing the Ayurveda, I started cooking differently with different spices, using a lot more turmeric and a lot more cumin and different things. And it's interesting because the spice profile is very similar to what we cook with in Peru. So it's I've got this Ayurvedic Peruvian fusion of food that I cook, and I use whole ingredients, which is also a secret. Whole food plant-based is different than plant-based because whole food, you're building the dish from the ground up. A lot of times if I'm cooking, a curry and someone can't have coconut milk in the curry, I will make a homemade cashew milk to substitute in it. So that way they can eat. And that's another thing that I bring to the table is this network of safety. People know that if I'm cooking, they can eat the food. I play a lot into people's dietary concerns, gluten and soy and eggs. And I had a retreat not that long ago where I couldn't use any nuts. I couldn't use any coconut. The only thing I could use was cashews. That was it. And it was okay, let's level up. Let's see how we can accommodate all the dietary concerns. So that way, when someone shows up to eat the food, they know that it's safe, which is a huge healing experience for people to feel so safe, because food is so many people's thing, they've got dietary concerns and they're like, I don't even know what to cook for myself. I'm so bored of the same 7 things that I know how to cook. And it's well, let's expand it some more. And so that's what's led me into retreats as well, is being this presence in the kitchen of complete and total nourishment and safety, and shifting people's relationship with food. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and been like, thank you so much for letting me in your refrigerator. That really deeply healed some stuff from my childhood. I wasn't allowed to get in the fridge at my parents' house, Thank you so much for the best foods of my life, right? Because after eating the food that I provide for 4 days on a weekend retreat, these women that I've been cooking for feel so incredibly light in their being. Because when I'm cooking the food also, I'm pouring so much love and light into the food. I'm singing in that kitchen. I'm stirring those pots, like with so much intention for the flavors and the food, and just, there's so much more than just the food itself. It's the energy in the food as well that's so deeply healing. And when you can feel the love and the magic while you're eating the food, it's a whole nother experience as well.
Yes. That's why it's my favorite form of magic, because it's something that you're doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much science behind like energy, and like even if you just go into like the water in it, like the memory that the water is holding of the love, of the joy, of the dancing, of all that was taking place as you were working with it, like there's so much science behind it.
Absolutely.
It's real, like you really are doing something that's healing and medicinal. Okay, now take me into womb wisdom.
Womb wisdom. So I work with a lineage from Peru called Munaiki. It literally translates to like universal love, like I love. And that's what it is. And it's so great because like the majority, let me just explain Munaiki a bit. So there's 9 different rites, and there's like the gatekeeper and the star keeper. There's like different energetics that are transmitted to you when you're working with these from the Andes, from the high mountains where like the Queros and the shamans live, right? They're so deeply connected to earth. And so like that's a frequency that I carry because I've been passed these rites down. And then the 13th rite, it's named the 13th after the 13 moons. This was a channeled lineage from the jungle of Peru. So it's from the Amazon. So that's the one that I work with primarily because the womb is so near and dear to my heart, and being so in touch with Mother Earth, like that is my calling at this moment. I'll work with the other 9 at some point in my life, but right now, like the womb wisdom. So it's called the Womb Keeper's Rite. And it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony that can be held for someone that is willing to or wanting to get these energetic light codes passed to them. And it helps really break up any stagnant energy in your womb and your lineage. So it's not just, I'm doing this work for me. You show up to these spaces when Munaiki's being held with the deep intention of doing work for your female lineage as well. And it's potent medicine because you don't have to be a womb keeper to show up for these ceremonies. It's beautiful because men can show up to do this work for their lineage too.
I've never heard that before.
So that's why Munaiki is so special to me specifically, because it's not just for women doing women's work. It's for men to show up and support the feminine. Mm-hmm. It's for men to show up and do the work for their daughters. It's for men to show up and do the work for their mamas, their grandmamas, and all the grandmamas before that, right? Like it's special for us because we're womb carriers, but it's even more potent when there's men wanting to do the work also.
Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never heard that before. I've never heard that men can also do this work.
Yeah.
That is super fascinating. So like who do you see coming to your like womb ceremonies? Like just any women? Do you most often see mothers coming, or do you see men? Do men take up that charge? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've had all across the board. There was one that I held at a very large gathering of women, and there were small kids present. Like there was a 6-year-old. So there's this part of the ceremony where you gather a rose petal for your womb, a rose petal for your mama, and then a rose petal for your grandmama. Right? And this little girl, she's picking her petals and she's like, this one's for my womb, this one's for my mommy, and this one's for my grandma. And like, oh my gosh, she's 6 years old starting to do this work. That's why it's such potent medicine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This might be what effect do you see the ceremony having?
So I have seen women really able to become lighter after this experience because they just cut ties with a lot of their ancestral stuff that wasn't even theirs, right? So that in itself is lightening, like deciding again to take that backpack off for your lineage because you are doing the work, right? I've seen people have like profound experiences where they just cry and cry and cry and just release so much of their own stuff. And then also, through doing that, they're making the lineage lighter, right? So I've had men come in and could feel like such deep, deep gratitude for their female lineage because they're not womb keepers. They don't carry one, but they came from one. Right? So it's like, it's so incredibly beautiful.
Yeah, that's lovely, Kourtney. So how do you integrate all this? Like, what impact has this had? And by this, I mean, your relationship with the plant medicines, your relationship with your own womb. How has this shaped you as like a wife and a mother?
That's a really good question. So when it comes to like integration, because I feel that like anytime you're facilitating these spaces or sitting in them, like integration is almost more important than the experience itself, right? People sit in plant medicine and sometimes they have like a disassociative reality after that because they don't know what's true and what's not because they're not integrating the experience, right? So for me, sometimes it can be a little more challenging because, when you have 4 kids, it's a little harder to get space to be able to do the things. And to be honest, more recently, within the last like few weeks, to be honest, like I have started stretching my body more, moving it. Like, I don't care what I'm doing. I'll be washing the dishes and my body will be like, you need to stretch. And I'm like, okay. So I'm in the kitchen, like getting stretchy and weird and, like dancing it out. My kids will look at me and be like, Mom, what are you doing? I'm like, my body needs to move, right? So like, that's a huge part of integration also, just moving the body. Because these experiences can bring up tension in the body and you have to say, oh, what is this serving me? Sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. And it's like, how can I get this up and out? And movement is huge.
I remember us being at the family retreat together doing yoga. Like, we need to do stuff like this more.
Yeah. And like, since that experience, like, I've become that person. Like I was at a Friendsgiving on Saturday and it was so funny because I was feeling this call to like move my body. I could feel like my nervous system so unregulated. There were so many people there, so much energy there, so many kids running. And it was like bringing some stuff up. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go out to the yard. And I did. And like, I had a friend actually come with me and we're just like out there raving with no music, right? Just bouncing in the grass, right? It felt so much better.
That's what it looks like to do the work. Sometimes you are kind of crazy.
Yeah. I was like, girl, thanks for hanging your weirdo flag with me. She's like, sister, anytime. And that's what it's about. Like, this is why you find the people that you're meant to associate and give energy to those relationships because, it's okay to be the weirdo. Because especially us having children, like, we don't necessarily have time to work through our body stuff, right? But you do. It's something I'm really realizing, like, again, you're the only one standing in your own way, right? It's so true. Like, you could be having a conversation with your kids and be like, hey, I'm fully listening to you and I have to move my body because it's calling me to do that. So stretch and have the conversation. They're outside, Mom, look at me. Sweet. Let me look at you and I'm also going to do this forward fold real quick, right? It can be that easy and it makes such a difference.
Yeah. I was doing dips on the playground yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, I got like half of 3 done, but it was more than what I would have done.
Exactly. So it's like just finding these little pockets of time and it doesn't have to look a certain way. That was something that always used to get to me. Like, oh, I must sit here on this pillow. I must have my headphones in with this music playing for me to meditate, for me to drop in. It's like, no, actually, this is our work. This is our work, especially as parents. Like, how can I just get 5 minutes of inner work? Oh, I can just sit in the grass right here. Let me catch the sun on my face for 5 minutes. And they're playing. It's okay. And that's our work to strengthen our own selves. to go out to help other people.
It doesn't take a lot.
It doesn't.
But it does take consciousness.
It does.
And intentionality. How have your parents living? How have your parents received your work and transformation?
I think that they definitely respect the work and our transformations, because we're definitely not the same people that we once were, especially the same people that came together 15 years ago. And I think that there's some like just mystery also. Like I've actually asked this question to my sister, like, what do you tell people when they're like, oh, what does your sister do? Right. And like, I always chuckle a bit because, you know, we live such an unconventional life to the normal, you know, ideas of how you should be in the society. And she's like, well, you know, I tell them that they have 4 kids and they live on a bus. Cause last time I asked, we were still living on the bus. Yeah. They live on a school bus, and my brother-in-law is a shaman. And if you don't know what that is, you can look it up, because I'm not exactly sure either. So that's who they are. I'm like, oh, funny. Yeah. Because we challenge the status quo. We do not live a life that people know, right? Like, we live in the gray all the time. Like, it feels like we're almost on like the fringes of society almost, because, you know, like we homeschool our kids. We lived in a school bus in Peru for the last couple years on and off, you know, like we don't have much stuff anymore either, because we've gotten rid of it over the years, right? Like, it's just so different.
It's different. This is for conscious couples, coaches, and catalysts of spiritual and wellness businesses who feel like imposters in their business because their relationships are draining or toxic. Do you feel like your marriage or relationship is hanging by a thread, constantly fighting with your partner and worried about how it's affecting your kids, your energy, and your business? Maybe you've tried everything. New diets, another self-help book, another certification, all in an effort to fix yourself, your partner, your family. And yet here you are, burnt out, exhausted, and still feeling like something's missing. I'm Krystal Arthur, and I've been exactly where you are. I've been married for 11 years, and most of those we were in spiritual leadership, preaching heaven while living in hell, both as individuals and as a couple. We lived through rage, anxiety, depression, and caused trauma to our 5 children. We followed all the conventional advice, confided in mentors, and went to the marriage retreats year after year. The message was always the same: behave better, resist your desires, submit, and obey the rules. But here's the truth. The real transformation happens when you stop trying to fix yourself and everyone else and start accepting and loving yourself unconditionally. The secret is in reclaiming your power and discovering where you're holding yourself back from intimacy, aliveness, and your truest desires, both in your relationship and in your business. As a wellness or spiritual entrepreneur or leader, you feel like you should have the answers, the spiritual perspective, the clarity to navigate and balance it all. But when your marriage is falling apart and you're starting to feel like a hypocrite in your own business, it can feel impossible to find a way forward. I've lived that disconnection, the feeling of hopelessness and the heartbreak of wondering if divorce is the only answer. Through my coaching, I guide individuals and couples to uncover their deepest desire and finally start to build the life, relationship, and business they're meant for. You'll learn to heal from within, letting go of the constant need to fix, and create a relationship where you and your partner become the power couple you've always dreamed of, full of purpose, passion, and potential. In this 6-month container, together we will create a field of safety, sacred sovereignty, love, and sensual empowerment that will elicit a remembrance in you of who you are and what you're capable of. It will transmute the energy of doubt, lack, shame, and resentment, and resurrect in you the capacity to have a thriving relationship with your pleasure, purpose, power, and partner. With this truth anchored and embodied, you will see your sovereign vision begin to manifest and experience the fullness of your magic. This is by far my most powerful offering. To learn more and schedule a free 1-hour clarity call, go to KrystalArthur.com or click the link in the show notes. This is a virtual offering. I'm on a mission to see as many individuals and couples come alive to their power, purpose, prosperity, and pleasure as possible. Again, that's my name, KrystalArthur.com, or find the link in the show notes of this episode. You mentioned like how you're focusing on like the 13th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll like focus on the other ones. Like, are there any other modalities that you're looking forward to focusing on in the future or growing within yourself? And I'll stop there for now.
Okay. So it's funny because I've been like a professional student of life for so long, right? And it's also that small amount of imposter syndrome, like, oh, I must get this certificate if I'm going to do this. Oh, I must do this if I'm going to do this. And it's like, actually, we have so much innate wisdom in us also that it's like some of this stuff is just who we are. And that's okay to not be certified in it, right? So I'm actually a postpartum doula as well. And it's so near and dear to my heart because it's a space that most women are not deeply held enough in, right? You're supported through the birth, even before pregnancy sometimes if you're super intentional with your body and like what you need to heal before you conceive. You know, like there's so much care and so much being held.
I would have loved to have hired you just to cook for me postpartum. Oh
yeah,
my God.
Like it's a space that is just not well served. And like, I'm grateful that my postpartum experiences have been held with family and my partner, but a lot of women, that's not their experience, right? And you're a new human with every birth, whether it's your first one or your fifth one, right? Like you are a different human and now you're caring for another human, right? So it's something that I definitely want to get into that I see myself doing in the future is, you know, holding deep space postpartum because I'm a lactation counselor as well. And I know postpartum food from an Ayurvedic standpoint to deeply nourish a woman to be able to build her back up. Because in Ayurveda, they believe that when you give birth, your earth and your fire that is creating this life is gone and you're strictly air. So you have to fully nourish your being to be able to stoke that fire back up, to become more earth and become more whole again.
That makes so much sense. Even on the, like, I dealt with postpartum depression as well as like postpartum OCD is what I was told. Well, that is all like your head is like, you know what I mean? Like air.
Air.
Like, just like,
it's the thoughts.
And it's just like, I'm thinking of like a leaf, just like, oh, you know, just like it's, and so, and I'm saying that like energy, but like also it's not, you know, it's depression isn't energy, but you know what I'm saying? OCD is like that.
Well,
but
that's
like,
the thing. Like when you're so full of air. So in Peru, they believe like the air, the Waida, is what creates the thoughts. So a lot of times if you have a headache or you're racing thoughts or you're anxious, they use this plant called ruda or rue in English. It's like a little yellow plant and they run it around your whole body and then light it on fire. And if it pops and crackles, it helped pull the air out of your body.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's the thoughts. The air is the thoughts. And that's why depression can happen so much more easily if you are depleted in every part of your being.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And my last pregnancy, I did actually get some Ayurvedic meals delivered to my house by a girlfriend who maybe I'll interview one day, but someone in our local community. And she delivered them to our house and she made them herself. And it was, some days I don't know if I would have eaten if I didn't have her meals. And so to know that I had these deeply nourished, and one of my kids was eating them too. So I had to order extra for him. So I'm like, this is my food. This is mommy's sacred.
Yes.
Like, but it was so helpful to have like something so deeply nourishing after having twins, you know? So, yeah, so good. Oh yeah, that would be, and you'd be so good at that. Oh my goodness.
And like,
whenever the time is right.
Yeah, so to deeply hold a woman and also be there because I've had 4 children of my own, so I can help you with nursing the baby. I can help you get a shower. I can help you nourish yourself while I help nourish you at the same time. And you know your child's taken care of. Yeah. So that's something I want to get into once we're like deeply rooted, like we're calling in a house. Like right now, this is my parents' house actually. So, you know, like we're calling for roots. We've got roots in Peru now. We have a house in Peru. And now next step is rooting here. So that way I can create these offerings for people because they're so deeply needed. They are. I've got more retreats coming up next year that I'm already booked it for. because, bringing that mama nourishment to the kitchen.
Yes.
And yeah, just more ceremonies and more love to be offered.
Is there something that you feel like people misunderstand about what you do or who you are?
The people that we have been calling into our lives, we support what we do and they love what we do.
It looks
right?
that way.
Now, family, they might not understand what we do. So it's just kind of like, we're the rainbow sheep of the family, just out here sparkling the way we do. And it also is cool because it actually opens up conversations.
I'm sorry.
Right?
You just took the black sheep and made it a rainbow.
Rainbow sheep.
Sparkle sheep. I love that so much. Yeah.
Because the black sheep have this connotation that we're the dark, mysterious ones. But no, we're out here just doing what we do because it's who we are and it's what we love to do. And, there's always going to be people that misunderstand what we do, especially, unfortunately, there are spaces where medicine is being offered that aren't safe.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much of that going on where it's people are sitting with medicine and the people serving are really only focused on the money it's bringing in, not fully in reverence to the plant sacrament, right?
How do you discern the safety of a medicine space?
Ooh, that's a great question.
We can't read people's intentions. Mm-hmm. So how are there signs that you can look out for?
My suggestion is to interview people. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to sit with a plant medicine, find a couple sources that and talk with them, because in having these conversations and raising questions, you'll be able to feel out if that person has your best intention set out, right? Interview people. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's wise. That's wise for sure. Something's come up and like I said, we edit this. So you let me know if you want to go here. Okay. I can relate to having an alternative for our culture vision and mission on my and my husband's hearts. And okay, so our journey, we were in very conservative ministry for 10-ish years, and that was our path with our education and everything. So whenever our paradigm shifted, that was no longer aligned, and we practically had to start over from scratch.
Absolutely.
Career-wise. And that, wow, I also was a stay-at-home mom all this time. Mm-hmm. I actually stopped working because my mom was in the hospital. Before I even started having kids, I stopped working. But then, wanting to get back and be able to contribute financially. Well, my degrees, I have a master's degree, but it's in a misaligned field now. Yeah. In some ways that actually, I'm getting off topic. The master's degree actually is a huge part of why I am where I am now.
Absolutely.
So I actually think that part of my education was actually very aligned. Anywho, but as far as job opportunity wise, so for us, that has looked like significant family support for a number of years. And for me personally, this is not coming from this is coming from me. It has felt more challenging almost to continue pursuing our mission because it feels like I should get a day job. And I actually did get a day job. It didn't work out. Several times I've actually tried getting a day job, but I feel like the universe is just nope. You make a little bit of money and then nope.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. And then the plug is just pulled on it. Yeah. And I know nothing out of my hands. How has that been, what has that impact been like for you? Has that been a challenge? Or maybe even can you speak to maybe people who are in that similar position where it feels like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing this because I'm needing to lean on family for financial support right now.
Girl, I'm glad we're talking about this. So this is where we're at right now too.
It is. It's I'm almost getting teary because it's it's challenging.
Absolutely.
To feel like I'm in alignment with the universe and have this continue to have your prosperity abundant mindset. And then there's things in the 3D.
And then it's hey, Mom, can you get my phone bill this month?
It's challenging when I'm 34.
Same.
Okay. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out here who also are having a similar experience. Yes. So you speak when you want to speak to them.
So I'm grateful this is coming up because this has definitely been our experience too. Like we're living at my mom's house right now because we got home from Peru in September and decided not to move back into our home, which is our bus, because it's too little of space for what we need at this point in our lives. And that's okay. Right. And also like we've been really leaning on our gifts to pay for things, which every time we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to pay for gas tomorrow? A client will drop in or something. Like it is the grand trust in the universe. And it's very exhausting on the nervous system to not know where the money's coming from. Like, yes, the bank of the parents. Thank you so much for always being open and supportive. And
huge work in receivership.
Yes.
Huge
Yes. And also like knowing that there's that little bit of energy, you know, between you and your parents now because you've used the bank of the parents. It's like this whole paradigm, I feel. And you know, like we've struggled so much with, is this actually what we're supposed to be doing? Because they say when you're in your dharma, the money flows, right? It flows. And it's like, okay, I'm in my dharma. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm doing what my spirit is lit on fire with. Like, I know I'm walking this path. And why can I still not pay my bills? Like for us, we haven't had the funds to be able to have like a house to rent or a house to buy.
A house for 6 people.
For 6
For us,
people.
it's a house for 7 people. Yeah.
And like, you know, like roots, like we've had the bus and, you know, like we've needed space. And it's like, okay, well, here's the universal trust. And it's like we've been planting these seeds for 3 years and it feels that it's finally okay. Like I can see the little buds coming through the, you know, the soil. It's like, okay, it's here. And I keep reaching for the fruit. That's one of Chasky's sayings. He's like, babe, you're reaching for the fruit. You gotta water the tree. You gotta love the tree. You gotta watch it grow, you know, and then the fruit comes later and you're not even gonna have to reach for it. It's gonna fall. Right? But here we are grasping for this money because we do need it to live. Like it's definitely a third dimensional like need. And it's like, I've also had these moments of scarcity where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to reinstate my nursing license. I'm just going to go to the hospital. Somebody will want me back because the nursing field is in high demand right now since COVID. Right. So it's like, I get in these mindsets, I apply. Sorry, you've been rejected. I'm like, all right, universe, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Like, I'm not supposed to be in that space. Like, that's not where my abundance flow is supposed to be coming from. Like, when I was working in the field as a nurse, I worked postpartum and like, I hung out with my patients. I wasn't the best charter, but like, you better believe I was there for my patients. I hung out with them. I taught them things. Like I knew when I discharged my families from the hospital, they were going home with knowledge that was applicable for life. You know, like my favorite one, you know, if the baby can't stop crying and you're getting so frustrated, put them somewhere safe. Like walk outside, put your feet on the grass, right? This is what I would educate people. Put your feet in the grass. Do it for 2 minutes. The baby's safe. Baby's safe, but you can't be safe if you're not regulated for them to feel safe to calm down. So take care of yourself and then go back, breathe, and the baby will start to calm down because now you're centered.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like it's not information that a lot of people know. And I have to remember that the majority of people in our everyday lives don't walk this path like we do. And they don't know that it's something simple as taking your shoes and socks off and go standing on the earth for 10 minutes if you have it.
Yeah.
Right?
It can be a game changer.
Yeah.
Something that simple.
And it is
free.
Super free. Right?
Yeah, thank you for going there. I know it's a really vulnerable place, but I feel like I hear a lot, like you said, like it's when you're in your dharma, it's going to feel like I hear a lot of people speaking about this, but I'm already earning millions of dollars. Like I'm already at that point, but I don't hear a lot of people speaking who are actively doing the work, actively serving people with their medicine, with their magic, and in this stage of it.
Yeah. Like we are on the forefront of the next step, you know, like that's why we're all starting to come together, Krystal.
Yeah.
Because we're all in a similar area of our life. Like we know that we are going to be so financially rewarded for the work that we're doing. And it's not fully being received in this moment. So it's like holding the faith that it's coming, keep walking this path. I know I'm doing it right. This is what everything in my being is saying to do. And then it's like, also, when's the payout? Because like being this stressed out about money doesn't feel good to the nervous system.
And that was a really good point that you made as well. First off, I don't want to forget this. Shout out to Chasky for that beautiful like metaphor of like reaching in. You know, I even thought of when you said that, I thought of maybe you kind of look like a lot of the illustrations of Eve. I don't just subscribe to that story as I was told. I don't anymore. But that's so interesting. Like reaching for the fruit.
Yeah.
Instead of just watering the tree, trusting that the tree is being watered and then waiting for it to fall.
Yeah.
That was so beautiful. But dang, I wanted to make sure I said thank you for that because that was such good imagery for me. Oh, but the reason I took it this direction because you said, thank you for saying nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
It's calming to the nervous system. And that's been a lesson for me in the past year because I kind of dealt with guilt. Like, I don't want to be that person who is money focused while serving plant medicine or money focused while, coaching or money, whatever. And learning to value my work.
Yeah.
And recognize that as I am healing myself in all these other areas, my nervous system is also something to be healed and treasured and loved and revered and served as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that on a biological level, when you don't know where how you're going to go to the grocery store or take care of basic needs.
Yeah.
That is something to be healed as well. That's a part of the journey.
Yeah.
That often isn't talked about. It's a part of the healing journey.
Absolutely. And it's that root chakra that has to be so nurtured because that's your foundation, right? Like when you're in scarcity and, like you've got survival mode happening because even in motherhood, so much of the time we're in survival mode, especially with multiple children, because it's like nobody has an issue. And then all of a sudden, like you've got 5 fires to put out because it's like, one person needs something and then now you got 2 or 3 and then all of a sudden everybody needs something. Yeah, like it's a thing, right? So it's like it keeps elevating and it's like, oh my gosh, I gotta put my own fire out first and then I can put the other fires out. It's the nervous system regulation that's everything. That's why like literally just shaking like moves it out and then you can rebalance.
Yeah. Just like 2 days ago. It might have been yesterday. It was yesterday.
What is that?
We were like driving or something, and I was just like, I was like, what did you just do? What did you just do? I was like, I breathed.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like explaining any more than that. I'm sorry, baby. I never went back and explained. But it's just like, I'm releasing. Like, I was just like, I breathed. He's like, but you don't usually breathe like that. I was like, I know.
So something that I've been doing with my 4-year-old that's like fun, we try to sound like a horse, right? Mm-hmm. Because it literally relaxes the whole face and like everything. So it's like, and he started doing it with me. He's like, wow, Mom, I feel better. I'm like, yeah, like it's just, what do you need to do to move something out of the nervous system balance, right? Just like move it out and then it feels better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So good. We're going to wrap it up with this.
Okay.
Go for it. You can stretch while we're talking.
I know, like, I'm telling you, I've become the weird stretchy friend. Like, we're on a podcast and I'm stretching because my hips got tight from sitting.
We won't even use the hips. Oh my God.
Get out of my marinara jar.
What I was going to say, we're going to wrap it up with this. I would love for you to speak a little bit to sound.
Okay.
Because I know you guys do like ancestral sound work. Like, what's the difference between regular sound therapy and ancestral sound ceremony? And what else was it? Just tell us. And so after that, just tell us where we can follow you, learn more about you. You said you have some retreats upcoming.
Yeah. Okay. So ancestral sound frequencies for sound healing. So Chasky comes from Peru. he comes from a very, very dense energy, because when you come from such deep ancestry and culture, you're a denser person. And it shows on his skin. He's a darker skin, right? So the more melanin you have, the more density you have in your body anyways, right? And so for him, when he's doing these sound journeys that I've started like helping him facilitate, like these sounds are completely channeled from like his ancestors. Like when Chasky comes into a room, sometimes it can be intimidating for people, because he's not just coming in by himself. He's coming in with all his army behind him, right? And he is a presence and an energy, right? And here I am, like in my love and light, and I'm like the complete opposite of him in so many aspects. Like my physical is completely opposite of his. I come from a very light space. Like he always says he sees me as an angel when he sees me in meditations and different things with like gold all around me, right? So he brings the drums, he brings the didgeridoo, he like brings up so much density up and out of the participants, right? Where I come in and I help with the more like angelic tones. Like my singing is very much of a higher frequency than his singing is. He does very like low tones and, like throat singing and different things. So between the two of us, we bring this like meld of, like this super, super high angelic frequency and this like low, dense energy to help people really release some stuff out of their being.
Oh, that's so fascinating. I feel like our next podcast together, we need to just go into y'all's relationship.
I would love that.
And what's it like to be married to a medicine woman? What is it like to be married to a shaman? And like how that, it's because you guys are so different. But you guys have, there's not a lot of people nowadays with relationships that have sustained for this long.
Well, and there's a prophecy that they talk about also. I don't know if you've heard of this, about the eagle and the condor. So the condor is a vulture. It very much is an intuitive bird, and it just, it flies around, and its food it intuitively seeks out, right? And it's a vulture, so it eats dead things. So it doesn't have to be very calculated in what it's doing. It just heart open and food shows up for it, right? Whereas the eagle are very logical birds. They have to be precisely calculated in everything that they do, right? Because their prey is live. So they have to be able to calculate and get it. So there's this prophecy in Native American traditions where they say when the eagle and the condor fly together, our world will become healed, right? So it's bringing that intuition from the South, where Chasky's from, with our logical Western mind and merging and becoming a bridge together to bring this intuitive heart space medicine to the logical mind and being able to help bridge that gap between the head and the heart, right? Which they say is often the longest journey one will take, right? Is connecting the heart to the mind. Because so much of us from the Western society, we're mostly in our brains all the time, right? So it's like, how can we drop into our heart more? And that's the medicine that Chasky brings, is becoming more in touch with the heart. And I help balance him out, because when I go to Peru, I'm the eagle, right? I can be so incredibly calculated. We need schedules, we need times, we need things. Where in Peru, that doesn't quite exist. Like, I've learned so much about flow from being in that space, because you might be able to catch a public transportation when you walk out of your door. Maybe it's 30 minutes from now, and everything's kind of like, you got 30 minutes to a 40-minute buffer on time, right? Nobody's in a rush. Everybody's, just doing their thing. They're going to get there with so much, they know they're going to get there, and it's fine. Like, there's not this like high anxiety energy like there is sometimes when you go to the grocery store, and it's just, if you stand back and you just like watch people, everybody's in a rush. Everybody's trying to get somewhere. You can feel it when you're driving sometimes, especially like rush hour. This is one of my favorite things to do, is like just immerse myself in rush hour and just feel the energies and just know that I'm there. Like, here's the ultimate test in patience, because I can't get anywhere faster than you can, because we're all in it together, right? I know most people would never want to sit in traffic like that, but it's such a learning opportunity in that time. And just like spreading your love because everybody's so pissed.
Okay, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Please share like the upcoming retreats that you have, or just where people can connect with. How can they find out more about the next events that the Church of Gaia Consciousness is hosting?
Okay, so this is a great question. We don't have a formal website or anything set up at this point. I've been calling in somebody who wants to help me do these things because tech is not I am not super tech savvy. Like I can do things sometimes, right? So excuse me. Right now, like the best way is to follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. So Instagram, it's Courtney Valencia, and on Facebook, it's Courtney Elizabeth. There's a picture of me smiling in the mountains of Peru. So like if you follow me, that's where I set my stuff out. 2 retreats that I have coming up in 2025 thus far is in conjunction with Lainey Love. She's got beautiful oracle deck called the Sacred Revolution. And she does a lot of women's work and empowerment leadership work. And it's so beautiful because I actually signed into her empowered embodied leadership program coming up for the next year. So like leveling up is a thing, which I'm excited about. And as her retreats start to come out, I will be holding the kitchen space and the deep mama energy that I bring. Yeah. So as things come out, I'll be posting them on my Instagram and on my Facebook.
Yay. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, last thing. I'm also starting a meal service. Yeah. So that's something I'm going to be doing. I'm starting with my friend Lainey. I just got to say, I'm so grateful for her because she saw in me a year ago what I couldn't see in myself. And she has given me this opportunity to be able to grow into my being so much more because she knew the qualities that I had before I knew. So her retreats have really helped open me up, and just being in her presence has just like expanded me in so many ways. So yeah, I'm starting a meal prepping service. I can do cooked foods, prepared foods. So all you have to do is just throw them in the pan, or a combination of both. And I'm looking for clients.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely follow her on Facebook and Instagram. The food's delicious. I can already tell you that. Can accommodate so many different dietary needs. Yeah. You are so beautiful.
Thanks, sister.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yes. It's been an honor.
Yeah. Here, one thing, if somebody wants to begin building a connection with Mother, mm-hmm. where should they start?
Ooh.
Give them 3 small things to do.
3 small things. So like what we talked about earlier, taking your shoes and your socks off and just putting them in the grass. Like it's that simple. Like it might sound weird for some people, but hug those trees. Hug those trees, because I'll tell you what, that space, you can give that tree what no longer serves you, and it will always take it from you and give you nothing but love and compassion back. I know it sounds weird, but hugging trees. And then just, like clearing your space, I feel like. So using a sage or a Palo Santos or something, and do it with the intention of more freedom in your life. Just those herbs is another part of, the plants. Like they're so deeply grounding. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you so
You're
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Divine Desire podcast. I'm Krystal Arthur. This is where together we dive into the wellness, woo, and taboo in business and in ourselves to reclaim our power and heal our relationships with our pleasure, purpose, prosperity, and partners. You're invited to check out the next episode. Please leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. Also, if you found anything helpful, inspiring, or curious, please share this podcast with a friend. If you want to invite me to be on your podcast, apply to be our next guest, or receive more teachings and tools from me, head over to KrystalArthur.com and join our free community and email list. Thank you so much for being here.